Hi there, welcome to another video from Hegarty Maths. It's Mr. Hegarty here, and in this video we're talking about surveys and questionnaires. So you'll remember from a previous video, surveys and questionnaires are ways in the data handling cycle that we may collect data. So in this video we're going to explore what makes a good and a bad survey or questionnaire and the types of questions that give you good or bad data. So let's go straight to an example to see an example of some questions and whether they're good or bad or not. Okay, Colin wants to investigate how much exercise the boys in his class of 30 boys do, so he gives them a questionnaire with the following question. How much do you exercise? What's wrong with that question? Well, it's very vague, isn't it? It's extremely vague, and it would be improved if you said how much do you exercise a week, for example. So number 2 is certainly improvement. You should be very explicit in and be specific in what you ask your question. So that's an improvement. So imagine we started off with how much do you exercise a week. Can you think what's not so good about that question, even though it's better than the first one? Well, what type of answers would you get? Students might say 10 minutes, they might say an hour, they might say, oh, I exercise, once a week. There's too many options. So you'd be better and improve your question if you gave them a tick box. So you said tick the appropriate box. For example, the following: never, sometimes, very often. Okay, so that is an improvement on 1 because you will get yourself specific answers and not loads of different answers that you can't analyze. However, again, if you started off with that question, right, the tick box question now, I'm sure you're screaming at the screen that that is also not a good question, and tell me why. Well, that is not a good question because the tick box options are extremely vague. What does never, sometimes, very often mean? You'd be much better if you gave actual limits like 1 to 2 times, 3 to 4 times, 5 to 6 times, and 7 to 8 times. That would get you a much more useful data to analyze. Okay, so there's an improvement, but we can improve further still. So can you look at that question we've just got to now and think to yourself, what's wrong with that? Well, it doesn't cover all options, does it? What if you didn't exercise a week? There is no option for 0, and there is also no option for more than 8 times. There might be some people that go to the gym twice a day, every day of the week. So here you've got 0 times included, and you've got 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and 3 or more. Okay, so that's an improvement in the sense it covers all options. But one last point to mention: can you see what's wrong with that question, our best question yet? Well, which box would you tick if you went to the gym 2 times a week? Would you tick that box, or would you tick that box? Well, you should tick both, shouldn't you? Because the boxes have been chosen so they're overlapping, which would confuse someone who was doing the survey. So that indeed is another bad question, and you would be better to have something like this: how much do you exercise a week? 0 times, 1 to 2 times, 3 to 4 times, 5 or more. So this question is the best of the questions. It gives you a very specific time limit. It gives you tick box options. It covers all options 0 and all the options more than 5, and it does not overlap as well. So that is the perfect type of question, really. And let's summarize that in the following statement here. So this is something you need to learn and copy down. The questions in the survey must have the following features to be good. The question's got to be specific, so it's got to have a time frame or units of measurement, for example. It must give options to tick, so you get good data back. Those options should be specific and not vague, not overlap, and cover all possible cases, and the word for covering all cases is exhaustive. It should not be leading in nature. For example, if you ask the question, don't you agree maths is the best subject, you might be influencing the person's answer, like kind of forcing them to agree with you. And lastly, it shouldn't be rude, or it shouldn't make the interviewee feel uncomfortable unless maybe you ask in advance their permission to ask such a question. Sometimes people don't like to talk about how much they earn a year or who they voted for or politics, so you should always ask them if they are happy to answer questions before you launch into something like that. And they are the 4 key elements that make good or bad questionnaires and surveys. So let's go on and have a look at a few examples and decide if they're good or not and improve them. Here's the first one. Pause the video and have a go. So Sarah wants to know how long her students spend on the internet. She gets them to fill in the survey with the following question: how much time do you spend on the internet? No time, a little, a lot. 2 things are wrong with this. What are they? Well, the first thing is no time limit or no time frame in the question. Okay, how much time do you spend, what, a week, a month, a year? So that's very important. And the second thing is vague tick boxes, so vague options, you can say. Okay, so we could improve that. So if someone then asked you to write a better question, pause the video and double check you could do that. Well, a better question would be something like follows. How much time do you spend? Maybe to the nearest hour. Be very specific about what answers you want. Each week, there's your time frame on the internet. 0 hours, 1 to 5, and 6 or more. They cover all cases and they are not overlapping. So that is a better question. Next one. Here's another scenario. Pause the video. Have a go at this. So Henry wants to know how many books his students read a month. He asks them the following question. How many books do you read each month? 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. Tell me 2 things wrong with that. Well, the first is it is overlapping categories. Okay, there's a 2 here and a 2 here and a 3 here and a 3 here. So you could just write overlapping. And the other thing is it doesn't cover all options. What if you don't read any books a month or you read more than 4? So doesn't cover all options. E.g. 0 books a month. Okay, so if someone asked you to improve that question, you may be asked to write a better question. Something like this would do the trick for us. How many complete books, be very specific that you want only the books they finish, do you read each month? 0, 1 to 2, 3 to 4, or 5 or more. That covers all options and is not overlapping. Next one, pause the video, have a go at this. So Dan wants to know how many hours a month his students read. He asks them how many hours each month do you spend reading? 0, 1 to 9, 10 to 29, and 30 to 40. What are the 2 things wrong? Well, it's not covering all cases. What if I read for more than 40 hours a week? That's the easiest one. Does not cover all cases. And the next thing is a subtler one, but what if I was to read a half an hour a month? Where would I put it there? I certainly couldn't put it in 0, and I certainly couldn't put it in 1 to 9. So the question would have to say how many full hours or to the nearest hour. So does not cover half hours, e.g. 0.5 hours. Okay, so a better question, if we are asked to write it, have a think. Well, it'd be something like this. How many hours to the nearest hour do you spend a month reading? 0, 1 to 9, 10 to 29, 30 or more hours. Here you've covered more than 30 hours, but also what you've done is you've covered the case of halves because you've asked them to round to the nearest hour. Okay, next one. So here Brian again wants to find out how many hours his students read. He asks them how many hours to the nearest hour do you spend reading. What's wrong with this? Well, there's no option for 0. And the other thing, it says how many hours to the nearest hour do you spend reading? It doesn't say a month or a year or give a time frame, so no time frame. And if we were asked to write a better question, just include a time frame and include all options, so something like this would do the trick. Okay, next one, pause the video, have a go. So Paul wants to know how his students will vote in the student elections between the 2 candidates, Maliki and Fiona. So he asks them to answer the following question out of the blue in form period. Don't you think Fiona is the candidate to vote for? Yes or no? There are 3 potential things wrong with this. Have a think. Well, 1, it's a leading question. It's sort of getting you to agree that Fiona's the best, so that's going to cause a potential bias. There's no option for don't know. Some people don't know. And lastly, you could say it's rude. He's just asked them out of the blue about something potentially private, how they will vote, and so therefore you could even say that this is quite a rude question. So if you're asked to improve it, something like this would do the trick. If you feel comfortable answering this question, please let me know which is your preferred candidate in the student elections between Fiona and Maliki. There is no obligation to answer if you do not want to. Fiona, Maliki, I don't know. And that's it for this particular video. Thanks for watching.